Thank you very much, and welcome to this talk. My name is Giuseppe De Simone. I currently work as a lead Agile coach in one of the Ericsson product development units. He said I'm Italian. That's not really true, because as someone said, like Sophia Loren said, I'm not Italian, I'm Neapolitan. So that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be here, because, you know, it's, I feel very much connected to you. I mean, the place where I come from, it's actually Greece. It's much more similar to Greece than the rest of. But I've been working and I'm currently living in Stockholm since 2013. Another reason why I'm pretty happy to be here is because actually I started my Agile journey here in Greece, actually by working for 3 months in Patras. I had the luxury to be together with other 18 colleagues, 18 apprentice coaches, together with 9 international Agile coaches at that time, and have one of my greatest work experience, probably the biggest and greatest experience in my whole work life. So I feel very much connected. I have a lot of friends in Greece, and some of those are in this room. So, and since then, it was 2009, I've been, helping different organizations inside Ericsson with lean and agile transformation, helping individuals and teams and the organization in, becoming better, have more productive life, more productive workplace. That's what I'm passionate about. What I'm gonna talk today, my talk is called Managing in the Century of Network Society. And actually, it's in a way inspired by what is the current Ericsson vision about creating a network society where every individual and every industry is empowered to their full potential. But before going that, I would like to show you a video to understand what I mean with network society.
I love the fact that something that didn't exist last year, this year, we're taking for granted.
There has not been a time, I don't think in history, that has enabled such rapid change.
For the first time now ever, things are intelligent, connected, and powerful.
All of the devices that we make have the potential to communicate with each other and have a reason to do it.
There are going to be a lot more people exploring, especially as you have this younger generation growing up and seeing the possibilities.
We don't know what news is going to look like. We don't know what education is going to look like. We don't know what government is going to, we don't know what business is going to look like, because we're inventing it out of a new set of connections.
It's going to change much more the next 10 years than what it did in the last 50 years. And that's because of the network society.
So actually, the world is changing a lot. Can you guess what this picture is all about? This was Pope election in 2005 and Pope election in 2013. Actually, everything is changed, and the pace of change is kind of changing as well. So the urgency of this talk comes from a clash. I see that, everything is changed. We are creating new ways of producing value, collaborating across borders, across any kind of boundary. We are really pushing this, the agile value of individual interaction over process and tools really to the next level. But still, we are managing our companies in the same way as with management practices that are from the 18th century. How can it be? How can we use for being more innovative, being more creative, management practices that were invented actually to transform maids and agricultural workers in people who are able to do the same task over and over again? How can it be? So, there are 2 questions that I would like to, to give an answer, to reflect with you today. I said, how can we still believe that the way we managed in the past is still working now? And actually, we have evidence that I think also the economic crisis might have something to do with the way we manage our companies. We have strong problem in productivity. And also, how can we create an environment where people can really give their gifts and sweat sometimes and heart in what they do? How can we achieve that? So I will start sharing a little bit of my story and go and rewind in 2010 in the first organization that I was coaching. And actually, we started transformation of, it was an organization of around 2,000 employees, distributed in 7 sites. We had 40 million lines of legacy code, kind of almost 2,000 software modules. And I was working with the site in Italy. And then we said, okay, we want to transform this in a more agile organization. So we started to do everything right, in a way. So we set up cross-functional teams, we break the silos in the organization, we start piloting Scrum one by one, teaching Scrum to teams and product owners and Scrum Masters, etc. Everything looked to be okay, and we did achieve certain improvement. But then it looks like we touched some ceiling. We touched some ceiling, and we couldn't go farther. I mean, we had a big problems. And what we realized, actually, is this. Do you recognize this picture? So what does the hostess say, when they teach you the security procedure in the aircraft? What do they say about oxygen mask? Yes. So we missed one important players in the picture, and we missed managers. Of course, we had a lot of commitment from the senior management, but then when it comes especially to middle manager, we forgot them. We forgot to ask them to put the agile oxygen mask on before putting it on the people. So because we realized that, okay, how can they can teach the others to certain values, or how can create a culture if the management is not supporting the culture? It might have been for many reasons, because they didn't understand their role. It's not because they were evil, it's just because they couldn't place themselves in the role. So we ended up with a lot of problems. And there's a lack of knowledge in transformational leadership. Managers were still too focused on short-term goals. We had disengaged employees regardless of Scrum. I mean, we had this myth of Scrum, in improving the enthusiasm and the motivation of the people, but this was not happening. And, use on old management practice, etc. So we realized that, what Peter Drucker said, that the bottleneck is really on the top of the bottle. So we couldn't forget about them. We should do something about them. So we learned about, okay, the importance of new management practices and values to support the organization to become agile. And Jürgen this morning mentioned a couple of things about, how you can be, can be the ceiling for a corporate culture. I want to say another quote like, the level of maturity of an organization cannot be higher than the level of consciousness of their managers. So really, this is kind of important for us. So we tried to explore a little bit. And so we ended up in looking at different things. And of course, we're looking at lean thinking, especially when it comes to management practices. We looked at system thinking and social sciences and complexity theory and cognitive science, a lot of different things that appeared not to be too much connected with software development. For instance, we said, okay, these are the lean software development principles, but when you say build quality in or respect people or deliver as fast as possible, what does it mean for a manager? How can I put this in practice as a manager or leader in an organization? That was one question. Filling this gap was not so easy because Scrum doesn't say anything about managers, and Agile Manifesto is quite agnostic about management and leadership, but we needed to fill this gap. And we started looking at the Cynefin framework. How many of you know Cynefin framework? Yes? It's like a framework from Dave Snowden. And it's basically, Cynefin is a Welsh word that means habitat. So it's a framework to make sense of the reality. So we started to understand that, okay, our challenges that we have every day are in different domains. And we ended up in understanding, and many of our challenges in a product development organization are more in this complex domain, when, you know, the relationship between cause and effect can only be seen in retrospective. So it's very hard to understand what is the right thing to do up front, but you should try to make experiment, to try to have emergent practices. So we got inspired by a bunch of books. There are also a couple of books from Jürgen here, but especially from 3 books. And this is the first, is Drive from Daniel Pink. How many of you have read Drive? Okay, I will explain a little bit. Then basically, he made a research, and he ended up in saying that if you are a knowledge worker, so you are doing creative working, you're not just loading trucks with bricks. Actually, once you have satisfied your basic needs, so like to be safe or to have enough food, etc., and to have enough money to live, which are called extrinsic motivators, what makes a difference is intrinsic motivators. And intrinsic motivators are basically 3. And the first one is autonomy. Autonomy means that, okay, you should be autonomous in decide what task you want to do, in decide how you want to do your task, in deciding who you want to work with, and you decide when you want to do a certain task. And mastery means that you are motivated in becoming better and what you do. I recognize this. That's what motivates me every day, to learn something more. But it's also say that mastery is a little bit a mindset, but it's also pain. So it's not, you cannot achieve mastery just by doing some training. And then purpose, that you should have to be motivated. If you are a knowledge worker and to be motivated, you should have a meaningful purpose to achieve. So this is one book. The second book that got inspired is this, that Jürgen mentioned this morning, Reinventing Organization from Frederic Laloux. How many of you read this book? Okay, you should do it. I know that you could have read it, but so I will explain a little bit as well. So he has also done a research, and then he ended up with a model, and basically he's saying that, you know, organizations have evolved along humanity history, following, you know, the shift of consciousness in people, and actually he realized that now we are looking to yet another shift. When the type of organization that can fit the current purpose, the current business purpose and business challenges, he called them teal organization. It's different colors to different kind of organization. And this kind of teal organization are made up on three pillars. The first one is self-management. Pretty easy to understand. What does it mean? The second is emergence. So the purpose is evolutionary and the practice are emergent, as we discussed before, in a complex environment. And then the wholeness, very, very important. Meaning that you should not wear a mask when you go to work. Normally we are used to get more a masculine mask when you go to work, feeling serious, feeling that you know what you're doing, but more embracing the other as a human being and embracing the others as a whole person. That's kind of something that we got a lot of inspiration from this. And the third book is The Fifth Discipline from Peter Senge. This is kind of masterpiece. How many of you read The Fifth Discipline? Okay, so I'm giving you some suggestion of book to read in the coming days. And basically, he was the one introducing what is called system thinking. But actually, the other disciplines are also important. So we get especially inspired by this concept of personal mastery, the concept of building mental models that can help having discussions in the organization, and also the team learning, how we can create learning platforms in an organization to accelerate the learning. So that's basically what we get inspired by. And then we realize, hey guys, but that's a complete paradigm shift from what we were used to. So we realized that it's a totally different paradigm shift. It has nothing to do with the traditional management practice we are used to be. It's kind of a big leap. So it's from managing people to managing the system. So it's from managing individual to create the right condition from people and team to thrive. And it's from reactive management to more transformational management, So you don't act only if there is a problem, but you try to create new things that, go together with the ever-ending change. And from management as engineering to more management as a social activity. And you're going to explain that, our organization are not machines. So managing organizations has nothing to do with engineering, but it's more to do with dealing with human beings or living systems. So it's more like a social system. And then to change management, driving change management, sidetrack activity to leading changes, fast experimentation and learning. So that's what I mean with managing in the network society, managing in 21st century. That's what we ended up as a frame said, okay, we need to make this shift. Does it make sense? So what I will show you now is some practices about, okay, how we incorporated these things we got inspired from. How can we incorporate in real life? And as a disclosure, some of these practices are things that are experimentation in some parts of the organization. I work in a product development unit which has around 500 employees spread into 4 different sites. But Ericsson is a big ecosystem. It's 116,000 people all over the world. So, some of these are experimentations done in small places. Some things are more, more widely recognized and also supported by senior management. But I want to give you just some example. And the aim of this is not to tell you what you should do, but you give you a set of options that you might want to try to see how it works. So, and I try to map this in the different things, so when it comes to wholeness from reinventing organization, autonomy from drive, learning a personal mastery. So I will cover different practices on different sides so that you can also make a connection about, okay, why we're doing a certain thing. So let's come to autonomy. The first is that, okay, everyone should decide what task you should do for. Of course, there are business purposes, etc. But when we come up with, especially from the beginning in our former organization, we come up with 10% rule. In the sense that every team and every individual has the possibility to work 10% of their time or whatever they want. I know that this is done in many other organizations, there are people that are doing 20%, but that's what they did. What we did, and actually it ended up in being very, very powerful to create innovation. Self-organization. You say, who decides in which team I am? And then we said, okay, we want to manage the horses with fences. So what we did is that we put it's kind of 120 people in one big room. And then we said, okay, we want to define this number of teams. And every person could get a colored mark with their competence. So I might have both coding competence and testing competence. I might be a product owner or a scrum master. So I get several colored tags depending on my experience. And then for each team, you have certain constraints. The first big was that every team should have the same possibility of success. And then you should not have less than 2 developers, and not less than 1 tester. You should have at least 1 product owner, 1 scrum master. I don't know, we put these constraints. So people, they just talk and then self-organize in different teams. And then in the end, they even decide who their manager was supposed to be. It's not that they elected their manager, but there was a pool of managers defined by the organization, but that actually they competed to get the manager, so they have the possibility to compete to get the manager they wanted. So it was pretty nice. It was a way to create a sort of, how can I say, accountability of the manager towards these people that have chosen them. So that was a very nice experiment. And at the end, also in having a good side effect of it. Nobody can complain about his or her manager anymore, because in a way you had to pick up, and you cannot complain about your teammates. Another small things was about the team hiring. So we had 2 different things. First of all is that when you had to hire a person from outside, I mean, the team were participating in the hiring process, they were participating in the interview, but there was also a hiring process inside. So if a team needed a new person, new competence, they could open up a job opening internally, and people could apply, send their CVs or their, why they want to join their team, and this was very nice way of having this autonomy of deciding who I want to have in my team. So we came to performance management, and this performance management issue is always a problem because, we have teams in an agile organization with how you can have individual performance management in a team setup, etc. I'm not saying that we solved this problem, but I think we did some step forward in the sense that, first of all, we tried to have self-determined team goals. And we use this concept of alignment and autonomy. So there was some kind of alignment in the what and why, in the what is the direction, and then there was an autonomy more in the action, so that people, again, they could decide their own goals, but within certain constraints. And basically, we created a tool which is called Agile Amplifier that helps us in creating mental models. So basically, we create a list of, we did it for teams, but we did it also for different kind of roles. We create a list of what we believe are the skills and the behaviors that are functional to create a high-performing organization. So we had for teams kind of this list of things, and then the teams can decide, can self-assess themselves and decide, okay, we want to improve on this. And we have this tool now for team, like gamified with cards. So they have one card for each of the different items. So they play like a planning poker. So they vote like a red, yellow, or green. And then after you have these cards are two sides. One is the item, and then on the back, here you have the green behavior, which is kind of the right behavior. You have kind of the wrong behavior or the wrong skills. And on the back, you have some question that can help the discussion, some kind of coaching questions. And then you see this team, they decide to work on those 4 items, and they can put some actions on the post-it. So this was, and so they decide what are their goals. So all the person in the team have the same goal for their individual performance management. But then since we have this Agile Amplifier also for any other role, they have their own individual roles, so they could have, 1/3 of their goal can be individual goals, but all the individual goals are related to personal growth. So we changed a little bit the rule of the game by saying, okay, it's not about I have something to achieve as individual, but whatever we have to achieve is team things. But then as individual, my goal is how can I improve myself and how can I help improving others. So I have a personal responsibility in growing myself and growing others. And this counts also, in some countries this counts for the salary review. So it's not about, we're not changing the salary review system, but we're adding a game changer in saying, okay, you are not rewarded because you are a superhero that have the solution in your pocket, but you are rewarded if you grow yourself and grow others, and then achieve the goals together with your team. And then when it comes to leaders, we have the same thing. We have leadership expectation. This comes from the HR in the business unit. So this is an organization of, several thousand of people. And you can see okay, we are asking how you should excel in system thinking, you should excel in modern software development, you should excel in Lean and Agile Master, and this is kind of what you should do as your, and we have an Agile Amplifier for leaders as well, for manager. I have some handouts here for those who are interested at the end, so you can see what are the skills and behaviors that we are using for leaders. And actually, some of the leadership teams, most successful leadership teams that I've been working with, they're using it for individual performance management of managers. So a leader of leaders is using this so that the person can use this to self-assess himself or herself, to get feedback from the others. So in their discussion, they can discuss, okay, what should I improve? And all this set of Agile Amplifier for different roles, it's kept consistent. So you are not have the risk of having Scrum Master doing things that are in contrast with what a manager should do, what a developer should do. So the ambition is to keep consistency in this thing. So you're very welcome. I will leave them here. So you're very welcome. And these are distributed as a Creative Commons, so you can use it, given that, I mean, I would appreciate some feedback back. But you can also change it if you like, because it's not a silver bullet. It's not rocket science. It's just that. So, okay, you're very welcome after the talk to come here and take one. So we did this. So it's a way how we can create a different discussion, how we can create discussion around the important things. And then we come to the learning part, how we can create learning platforms for organization to accelerate their learning. We try different things. We're still doing different things. For instance, we do hackathon and non-hackathon. I think most of us, or you know what a hackathon means. Basically, we have 24 hours of challenge across several time zones. So anybody can throw a challenge and maybe gather a team, even a distributed team, to achieve their challenge. If you don't manage to gather anyone, your challenge is not attractive enough. There are business guys that are throwing business challenges, and then you can hack for 24 hours. But then we call it also non-hackathon, because actually now you can throw any kind of challenge. I want to work about how we can change the salary review system. And then you got the people that want to change about that. And then at the end of 24 hours, and then we want to, how you can gamify these kind of things or whatever. So we have coaches gathering on special challenges. So that's why we call those hackathon, non-hackathon. And then we have small things like book club. I did it very successfully with leaders. Basically, it's a group of leaders. We meet for lunch every Monday. Thank you. And basically, we have some kind of, we choose a book, and then we have homework for the whole week, and then when we meet, we discuss what we learned. And and we move on until we finish book and move to another book. That's very powerful also for me as a coach, because I don't have to tell things. I mean, they will learn them by themselves. And it's much more powerful than me saying. So I'm just trying to facilitate the discussion. We did the same with Cine Club, like we watch movies during lunchtime and having lunch together, watch a half-an-hour movie and have discussion. And then we organized an open Scrum Master gathering in Stockholm last April. Or May, I'm not sure. We have been doing this many times, and this was like the first open ever. We had 120, 130 people. Everything was free. We got some sponsoring at our premises in Exeter. There was a lot of companies participating, so we were very happy. And you see, the whole day, it was just one talk in the morning and one talk in the afternoon. The rest was open spaces, so we touched almost 30 items, and there were, groups having, we had 3 slots, and there are people gathering around flip charts in many parts of the organization, discussing the things they wanted to discuss. Super easy to organize and super cheap, and a lot of learning. So I'm really looking for things that are, when the return on the time invested in terms of value learning is very high, and I can tell you this is kind of very super easy. And then, of course, we have community of practices for coders, for developers, and for coaches is our community. This is our website. We have our vision, etc. But we have a guild for managers as well. So we discuss things. We are, it's not about, having this community of practice, not for coders, only for coders. It's for everybody. It's a learning platform for people to learn. And then when it comes to wholeness, this is very important. We try to embrace wholeness. I must say that, in my understanding, this is already very close to kind of Swedish culture, as I understand. Someone might, so that you embrace the others as a human being. So I think this resonates a little bit, but we try to be more radical in this. So we create intensive sessions. There are 3 days intensive sessions. that you do off-site. So you sleep together, and then you discuss things like, how can I lead myself? How can I embrace the others as a human being? How can I understand the others? The urgency of learning. We talk about happiness, balancing body and mind, love. It's kind of radical topics to discuss, but I feel a very transformative, outcome from this. I mean, people start discussing on a total different level. Then, we're not colleagues anymore. We are individuals. It's like, I think if we use the practice that we normally use in our offices, like, okay, I told you should have done this. Why are you not doing it? Or you should have come this and this. And we use a certain kind of talking to each other. But I'm sure these things are not working in your families. I don't think you can talk to your wife or your kids in the same way you talk to your colleague. And then you see, like, why is that? Why should use a mask in the office? And so this is kind of called enabling, empowering, and emotional. So this is a kind of summary, again, for you. So the point is really telling a little bit about our story, what I did with different groups in the last 6-7 years. And some of those have been more successful. Some of those have been successful in one place and not in another. But all of those have been helpful, at least in some case. So that was I want to tell you. So I thank you. And I really encourage you to give it a try. I mean, you don't have to decide that you're going to do certain things forever. But you might want to give it a try and see if it works in your context. And that's it. I hope I've made the...
Oh, question time. I saw there's also a question from panel sensor. So let me just read it. Kudos to the SAI people who use it. Okay. How can a manager be up to date with all emerging practices, frameworks, and trends while being productive in her day operations? Good one.
Yeah, I know it's hard. I did not say it was easy, did I? So it's hard. But I mean, we saw that, a big difference in, I mean, you must not be the biggest expert in these things, but you must have a decent level of understanding of these things. I mean, I cannot, you cannot be a manager in a modern if you don't know what a coding dojo is, or if you've never been to a coding dojo, or if you don't know about continuous deployment, or if you have still to discuss why it's important to deliver more often. And I'm still sometimes getting trapped in this discussion, and I'm fed up. I mean, you cannot discuss these things in the 21st century. And I had, I mean, one thing that I heard from a friend at Spotify, Jonathan Rasmussen, he said, one thing that makes a difference in our company is that all managers have a big understanding of the product. And then this makes a lot of our decisions super easy. So if we need another server for our continuous delivery or whatever, for our pipeline, it's no-brain decision. They just get it and understand. I see other contexts when you have to explain why is that, what is the gain, and this is just a waste of time. So you cannot be just effective without knowing that.
Great. So, questions from the audience? Hands. Wait, just 1 second, please. Everyone can hear you.
So this work was based on findings you did in Sweden. Did you find it easy to apply them to other parts of Ericsson operations?
No, actually,
this is first part of the question.
Yeah.
And second, similar, but in another dimension, is that did you apply this kind of principle in product development, software development, hardware development, or other departments as well, like finance, HR, accounting, things like that? Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, actually. I mean, actually, most of the things that I showed are not from Sweden, actually. I mean, most of them are from Italy. which I assume has a similar culture to yours, a South Italy center. Most of these things have been applied, like this performance management, have been applying in Croatia, in China, yes, this E3 now has been run all over the world. It started in Finland, but then it's kind of now happening all over the world. So I didn't see, of course, I mean, you have to adapt a little bit about the things that you do. For instance, in this embracing wholeness, it's a little bit things that you have to do it a little bit different. But I think people understand bottom line. I think that there is more things that are common. And actually, there are a lot of researches about that. That, I mean, the difference about the nationality are not so important in many things. Are more, important, I mean, which kind of, what did you study? For instance, there is much more, a difference between an engineer, a Swedish engineer and non-Swedish engineer, that between a Swedish engineer and an Italian engineer, they have much more in common. Male and female, etc. So we need to do certain adaptations. So the question is yes, that was not from Sweden. And the second part is that some of these things have been applied also to other. Of course, I mean, the product development part is where most of these things are coming from, and I've been working in product development. But I have experience about coaching our administration team in Italy. They wanted to improve how they work together. And now, I mean, HR is coming more and more on board on this kind of things. For instance, this leadership expectation that I show comes from, I mean, it was driven a little bit bottom up, but then now it came from HR. So it's a slow, I mean, you can understand it's such a big, so there might be some part of the organization that have done more and some others less. But yes, it's not about, I mean, it's not polarized from one place or one organization.
I also believe that if one part of the organization starts performing very well, the other ones like to adopt it. So
Yeah.
talking about the whole agile translation there.
Yeah, I think you might have similar experience.
Yeah, so another question. Come on, the man is here. I mean, you can of course reach him afterwards, but it could be nice you have a good question for everybody to hear.
Hi, as you mentioned, this was a paradigm shift, and this requires change from other people. Did you have challenges convincing other people to apply those new practices, and how you overcome it?
Yeah, of course, it's a change. It's a change process. As a coach, I mean, my main goal is to help people learn, is to people become better at what they are doing. Of course, you cannot help people who doesn't want to help to get help. So all these things, of course, starts with a small group of innovators. Is this bell curve of innovation. So I mean, of course, there are people that are standing in the queue when the new iPad is coming up. They are even sleeping over, and there are people that will not buy an iPad unless this will become the only available device on the world. So you have different people, and you have different people everywhere. So everything starts from a small group of innovators. Some of these things are still adopted by a small percentage. Some other things are crossing across the chasm, so they are more and more embraced. But I mean, the good thing is that there are always 2.5%, I think, of innovators anywhere. So I think if you have 100 people in your organization, you will always find 2-3 people that will be very, very willing to try something new. You don't even have to convince them, because they will jump just because it's new. So I really encourage you to look for, to chase these 3-4 people, and then when they start, there will be this, early adopter, which is one other, like, I don't know, 30-14%. I don't remember the figures now. They will jump on very soon, as soon as they see some results. So this is the situation, but I think there is a possibility everywhere.
We have time for another question. Someone? I have a question then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you worked, you are referring to large-scale organizations. Have you worked with small, medium enterprises And if so, is there a relationship between reluctancy to change in larger organizations, which is much more difficult, to smaller organizations which are supposed to be more adaptive?
Yeah, I mean, I always work as an agile coach inside Ericsson, but in different organizations. And I mean, Ericsson is a big ecosystem, and you have certain product areas that really work like small enterprises in more innovative areas. You have the traditional products that are more like, you know, more standardized practices, more, and you have other organizations that are working on more on new products. They are smaller, so you can. I think I could see the difference, but of course, I mean, if you have an inheritance of process, it's much harder. But I think, I mean, the biggest is the biggest difference is in the actual people working, and the biggest resistance is always coming from middle manager or senior technical people that see like they are, you know, their status quo is challenged, and this happens the same everywhere. That's my experience. So, but I think the importance of these things is to take care that this is a change process. So look for innovators, try to, you know, create a team of innovators, try to have them on the same place, and don't spend time on the reluctant, on the laggards. Don't waste time. I learned on my own expenses. Don't spend time discussing and convincing them. It's waste time. I mean, take your energy, put your energy on the innovation. Just take care that those are not, you know, sabotaging anything. But
last question.
Yes, thank you. My question is related a little bit to his question. So when you're trying to integrate Scrum into the company, is it better to make it step by step, or is it better to be more aggressive? When the whole organization has been working with waterfall?
it depends. It depends on what you want to achieve. It depends on what you want to achieve. I mean, I cannot tell you. There are pros and cons on both. I mean, it's just that you don't spend too much time in the mud, a little bit in the middle. But I mean, if it's more stepwise or a little bit more revolutionary, it depends. I think certain things top down must be a little bit revolutionary. For instance, you cannot expect that the structure changes bottom line step by step. There must be a very high commitment from senior management. Some other things you can do it from the grassroots. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, for example, during the sprints, there are like few meetings. You have daily stand-ups every day, and you have planning, you have retrospective, you have review, you have grooming meetings, and then you have to keep the attention of the team for few hours a week only for those meetings. So they could be reluctant to join the meetings, and they can say, well, before that, when we did waterfall, it wasn't like that. Why we should keep?
I mean,
why should start with that?
I mean, in my experience, I mean, I said, I heard this comment many times. I mean, my experience is not, the real problem is not the meeting or it's not Scrum. The real problem that people don't want to participate is that those ceremonies are crap. They suck most of the time. I mean, they are totally broken, and I mean, you have planning like the one that got described, you have retrospective, they are over the same, where people just complain. And then, of course, people, I mean, human beings, if they don't see the value of something, they are not participating. So, but that's a lot about, you know, finding a good role models. So, I mean, also the use of this, because in order to create a good ecosystem, you need to put a lot of things in place. So one of the needs that this Agile Amplify want to fulfill is how we can create consistency and everybody can play the role and we are on the same boat, in the same direction. So, so that's what I've seen many times. And one thing that I didn't mention it, and something that helps a lot in having manager being on board is teaching them Scrum, for instance. I mean, having them feeling the pain about, I have leadership teams working with Scrum all the time, so they can understand they can understand the pain and feel more why certain things need to be in place. But I mean, there is no general recipe. I mean, it depends on the context, it depends on what you want to achieve. I've just have experienced that certain things can be achieved bottom up, other things cannot be achieved and need some kind of top-down support. But please, I mean, if you want to take this, I would be happy to have more discussion about these things. I will be around the whole day, and I would be happy if you have feedback about these things and all the rest.
Great management advice and hands-on presentation. A big applause to Giuseppe again.
Thank you very much.
Don't forget the handouts.